In this video, I'm going to show you how to connect the Headrush to the Bluguitar Amp1 via the 4-cable method and MIDI. So if you've seen my last video on how to set up the MIDI PC messages per rig, then we're going to take this one step farther, and we're actually going to connect the Headrush via 4-cable method to the Bluguitar Amp1, so that way we can get all the effects integrated per rig and get all the different sounds of the different channels of the amp, combined with the delays, reverbs, overdrives, modulations of the Headrush. Alright, so I have my snake cable right here, and I made this many years ago, and I've had it with multiple different amps and multiple different pedal board setups. So all I did was just take 3 regular guitar cables, use a little zip ties to connect them all the way down the chain, and this setup has done me well for a very long time. So first thing we gotta do is just go ahead and make all the connections to the cables. So we gotta take the guitar cable from our actual guitar, and we're gonna plug that into the input of our Headrush. So I'm going to take this out of the input of the Bluguitar Amp1, and we will plug this into the input of the Headrush right there. And then we're going to take both ends of our cable here. Now I don't have these color coded, but I pretty much know, what each one is. Like this cable has a sleeve, so I just find the other cable that has a sleeve. This cable has a green tape on it, so I find the other cable that has a green tape. And then this cable is just a oddball cable with no sleeve and no tape, so I know which one that is. Alright, so the key to hooking this up and the mindset that you want to have is just imagine that you have your guitar going to the input of your first pedal, which in this case is a Headrush, but maybe for you it could be a compression pedal or a tuner or whatever that is, okay? So you go guitar, first pedal, maybe you have like a phaser or like a wah pedal in there. So you got a few different pedals in the preamp section of your setup. So now you take the output of that last pedal in your first little chain, and you're gonna send that to the input of your amp. So what we need to do, I'm going to use the cable with the sleeve on it here. We're going to take a send out of the back of the Headrush. And in the Headrush case, we're going out of the left mono send. And then the other end of this cable, we're going to plug into the input of the amp. Alright, so that completes the first chain. Now from here, we have to take the send of the amp and go into the first input of our wet effects, or what I usually include with modulation, delay, and reverb. So let's say we go send out of here, which I'm going to use the non-green side. So send from the amp into, let's say, a tremolo, for instance. And then out of that tremolo goes into a delay. Out of the delay goes into a reverb. Then out of the reverb is going into the return of your pedal. Okay? So that's going to go into the left mono of the return. And now we have the 2 green ends right here. You can see that. So now we're going to use the 1/4-inch output of the Headrush and go into the return of the amp. Now this is going to be another very important step. So let's go to the clean rig of our Headrush, and we're actually going to insert an effects loop. Okay? If you watched my Line 6 HX Effects videos, you know that when I go to my signal flow view, I insert an effects loop block into the chain, so that way the unit actually knows, hey, I do have cables running from the sends and returns and outputs of this unit going somewhere else. And otherwise, if you don't have that block in there, it's going to bypass the send and return of the unit and goes straight out the output into the effects return of your amplifier, basically bypassing the preamp section of your amp. And in some cases you may want that, like for instance if you want to use the amp model from the Headrush but use your amplifier as a power amp, you can totally do that. Or if you want to have the effects loop block in there, it's going to make all the appropriate connections, and it's going to allow you to use the effects before the amp going into the input, like your drives, your wall, your phase, your flange, stuff like that. And it's going to send your wet effects, like your tremolo, chorus, delays, reverbs, into the power amp section of the amplifier. All right, so let's go ahead and make some sounds here. And I am using my Reverend Sensei, bow to your sensei, guitar. Okay, we do need to have the volume up on the Headrush a little bit. I usually keep mine around 7 or 8, somewhere in there. Because the harder we drive this master output, we are going to send more volume to the amp, and it may prematurely distort, especially on a clean sound, which you may not want. So we can experiment with that a little bit, but just make sure you keep it at a nice healthy level, but not too loud to where you're driving the input of your amp, okay? So here's a clean sound. And you can see on here that we can send and return. We can change those levels. We can make it be 0, which is going to alter the gain staging a little bit as well. So let's listen to it now. Alright, so when I look at the preamp going into the computer, which is where I'm recording all this audio, I'm basically flatlining that wave. So I'm hitting it way too hard. And I'm just going to go ahead and turn down the level where it was before, so that way I'm not sending too much signal. And once again, this all comes down to gain staging and just being able to send a volume to the next signal chain and then not driving that too hard and then sending it to the next and on down the line, okay? So that's a lot better as far as my preamp goes, and we're good on that level. Alright, so let's say for instance that this is our clean channel. So we're going to go ahead and bring in a compressor, okay? Alright, so it's going to help our clean sound just kind of lengthen out a little bit and get some sustain. Let's go ahead. Now, there is reverb on the actual amp. Let's go ahead and add just a little reverb to our overall sound. We'll bring the mix down. Now, just depending on what you want to do, I mean, you can adjust the level of your reverb. Let's bring in, I really like the pitch delay. We'll put it on 3/16. Alright, that's fun. And let's go ahead and bring in some modulation. I really like tremolo, so we'll keep it really basic. Alright, we'll keep that one off for now. And just for fun, we'll bring in a tube screamer, just in case we want to kick in a little dirt on top of our clean sound there. We can do that. as long as I have my effects loop in the chain, everything before the effects loop is going to the input of the amp, and then everything after the effects loop is going to the send and return or the effects loop of the amplifier. Okay? Okay, and from here, let's go ahead and add one more overdrive. Let's do the black op. We'll make it purple. And if you're the kind of player that just likes playing clean and wants to kick in a little dirt with pedals, this is a great setup. We're still using the clean channel of the amp, but we're incorporating the digital effects on the Headrush to get the same sounds that we would with analog pedals, like your Keeley pedals or your Wampler Dirt, or any kind of, just name your favorite pedal that you usually use, and we're just building that in virtually on the Headrush. Okay. Alright, so if I like that combination of effects, I can further go into hardware assign, and I could set up some scenes so I could switch from like clean to a tremolo sound with delay and reverb, and then maybe kick in some rhythm or lead tones with the JRC and the black op. Alright, now if I want to go to my vintage channel on the amplifier, I just go to my vintage rig, and now you can see that the channel has changed the vintage, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in my effects loop block, so that way the Headrush knows I have the cables connected to the Amp1 via the 4-cable method, and we get this sound. Alright, so let's say in this rig we want to keep it real simple. We're just going to add a JRC. And we have the drive all the way down, tone in the middle, level, 75% of the way up. And this is what that sounds like. JRC off. Alright, so I had a question the other day from a fellow Headrusher that wanted to know how I use a tube screamer, and that is exactly how I use it. I just turn the drive down, crank the level, and just push the front end of the amp with more volume, more mid-range, so it naturally rolls off the low end and just pushes more grit and grind into the front end of the amp, and just makes it come alive more. So alright, probably don't need to do a whole lot more than that. But let's just say for fun that we want to add in an orange phaser. We'll make it mono just because we're running a mono signal. And now let me show you what happens if we put it after the effects loop block. Now it's going to be in the effects loop of the amp, and it's going to sound a little bit different. So check this out. Isn't that weird? You hear it a lot more. I mean, the effect is way more prominent. And it's not a sound that I prefer. So I like putting it before any gain in my signal, and it sounds like this. Alright, very cool. And let's just say that we wanted to have some delay. Let's do a tape echo. We'll do an analog long. Alright, let's bring up the level just a little bit as the mix. And this is another situation where if I wanted to create some scenes, I can do that. Now, for instance, let's just say if I want to add in an amp, let's add in a Princeton reverb. Let's take out the cab, and we'll turn up the volume a little bit here. Now, if I bypass the effects loop, now I am bypassing the preamp section of the Amp1, and I'm now using the virtual amp, in this case, the Princeton reverb. So check this out. We turn off the tube screamer. Very cool. And I can also go in and I can turn on the vibrato on the amp itself. Alright, so now at this point I have two different options for a clean sound. I can have the clean coming from the amp, or I can have any of the Fendery, Voxy, matchless kind of clean sounds available in the Headrush, and I still get all the benefits of using the power amp, which the Bluguitar Amp1 does have a tube in the power amp section, and I'm using a physical cab, and in my case it has a vintage 30 and a greenback. So I'm getting the amp in the room sound because I am using an amp with a real cab, but I'm getting all the functionality and tones from the Headrush that I would normally use going direct to front of house anyways. So this is a very cool setup, and let's go ahead and do one more just to show you here with the classic channel. And you can see on the Amp1 that it switches to classic. And if I go ahead and play at this state, let's hear what happens. Okay, remember if I don't have an effects loop in there, then I'm basically bypassing the preamp section of the Amp1, and I'm going straight from the output of the Headrush into the effects return of the amp. And you're not getting any preamp sound at that point. So that's why it sounds very dry. And there's just not a lot going on. So as soon as I put the effects loop block in there, now listen to it. Yes, that sounds great. It basically gives you your JCM 800 Marshall-y kind of sound, so it's awesome. I can't live without my tube screamer. Let's throw that in there. Now for a lot more fun, let's throw in an air filter, and I like putting in my Doc Cock 2 preset. Woo! Man, I do like using the expression pedal for wall stuff, but sometimes it's just easier to throw in an air filter and let it do the work for me, so I don't have to worry about my foot, you know, going back and forth and all that fun stuff. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about a few things that isn't great about this setup. Now for one, when I hit the clean sound, let me go ahead and play a little bit here. So what you heard just then was the relay switching to the different amps, and it was maybe a split second after you actually hit the switch on the Headrush. So what that means is if you're playing and you want to get a smooth transition between amp channels, then it's going to be a little hard to get the smoothness that you want. So my suggestion is if you want to have a good clean and a rhythm sound, then maybe what you need to do is go ahead and choose the dirt sound that you want for that rig, and then via scenes you can just bypass the effects loop, have a clean amp model coming from the Headrush as your clean sound, but you're still using the power amp section of the Bluguitar Amp1. So that way you get a little bit smoother transition from your clean to your dirt and so forth. So let's actually do that for the modern channel right here, because I really like the modern channel. It's more like your Mesa Boogie, Friedman kind of sound. So this is what this sounds like with the effects loop in there. All right, so here we go. Alright, I like that sound, but if I were to switch to the clean sound, alright, this is what would happen. So I go modern. So as you hear like a little two-step glitch in the sound there, that's not exactly what I want. But if I go back to my modern sound and I throw in the Princeton reverb like I did before, and let's go ahead and throw in some compression. Let's bring that to the front. Let's throw in our air filter. And we're going to throw in a tube screamer. And we're going to have some reverb and delay. Let's do a dying delay on this one. So what we can do at this point is we're going to go to hardware sign. And on the first few switches here, we're going to just do toggle and scene. So we're going to make a few different scenes here. Okay. Scene 1 is going to have dynamics on, air filter off, green JRC off, effects loop off, because we're going to use the clean sound from the Princeton. Amp is on, delay is off, and reverb is off. Okay? Because we are going to use the reverb from the Bluguitar Amp1 for this. And I'll make the color purple. Okay? So now let's go ahead and check it. Let's actually hold the switch to the modern channel. And what that does is it changes everything over to the stomp view while you're still technically in rig view, okay? Because if I hit exit over here, I can just go back to my rigs view. Then I could hold down the vintage switch and it would show me my stomps, okay? And I can press exit, hold down modern, and now I see my stomps, okay? So that's the easy way to still be in rig view, but momentarily go to stomp view whenever you need to, okay? Alright, so scene 5, scene 6 is going to be air filter off, green JRC off, effects loop on, amp off, delay off, and air reverb off. Okay. And we're going to make that purple. So scene 6 is going to be our dirt. And then scene 5 is going to be our clean. Alright, so check this out. Here's my clean sound. You can see that my compression's on. Filter, JRC, loop is off, delay's off, reverb's off. So here's my clean sound. Now the dirt is going to turn off the amp, turn on the effects loop, and it's going to sound like this. Back to clean. Now I have a few options here. If I want to, I can turn down the send a little bit more, so it'll level out the sound of the clean virtual amp versus the natural volume of the Bluguitar Amp1. Okay, so here's clean again. Then here's dirt. Alright, let's go ahead and do scene 7, which is going to be delay on, effects loop on, amp off, green JRC, and air filter. This is going to be purple, and we're going to name it lead. Okay. Check this out. Alright, so at this point I have a few scenes set up within my modern rig. I can go from clean to modern and just go back and forth. I can always add in some DC distort or some black op if I want a different sounding dirt section, but for now, clean and your Mezzo Boogie style overdrive is great. Okay, I can just press exit and I can go to a different rig if I want and play a little bit. Go to classic. I can go to modern. Alright, so this is how I would set up a 4-cable method with a Headrush using a real amp and incorporating MIDI into the mix so I can control the channels on the amplifier and still get the core sound from the amp, but just supplement some of the things like additional clean sounds as well as effects into the overall rig. So leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this video, and if this is something that you would like to do with your own setup. Maybe use a digital front end with an analog back end so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. And if you haven't done so already, please hit the subscribe button down below and click the bell so you'll be notified for future videos, because I will be making a lot more videos on digital and analog setups and how to integrate these two together. Be sure to check the links down in the description. And in the meantime, I am Dr. McFarland. I will see you in the next video. Keep rocking.